Hello everyone and welcome to my channel called Demo Storytime. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel, for your likes, comments, for your donations. All information about donation you can find down below in comments. And today continue reading this book called Fairy Tales. And our story will be called, I have no idea, Hansel and Gretel. Here's the drawing for our story. Which way to go? Their father loved Hansel and Gretel very much. Perhaps that is why their stepmother hated them so, wanting all his love for herself. But since she ruled the household with her nagging tongue, she knew she could find a way to be rid of them. When the famine began, she said to her husband, "There is not enough food to keep us two alive, let alone those worthless children of yours. Take them into the forest with you tomorrow and see to it that they lose their way here." Luckily, little Gretel was lying awake, too hungry to sleep. She heard what her stepmother said. "Wake up, Hansel," she whispered. "Our mother means to kill us." When Hansel heard about the plan, he soothed his sister's crying and crept out of bed. The moonlight garden, he filled his pockets with all the white stones he could find. Then crept back to bed and tried to sleep. Thought why could sleep with such a day ahead. Their unhappy father was woodcutter and each day went deep into the forest to work. That day he took his children with him and led them down maze of tangling pathways to a clearing in the very middle of the woods. "Wait here for me," he said, kissing them and wiping tears from his eyes. "Don't do that, so you don't need to cry. I'll come back for you at home time. God forgive me if I don't." They could hear his axe blows thud crack echoing further and further off. Then silence settled on them like leaves. When night fell, they were all alone, abandoned, lost. Gretel began to cry. "Don't fret," said Hansel. "You know those stones I gathered last night. As we came here this morning, I dropped them one by one. All we have to do is wait for the moon to rise." And sure enough, the rising moon, like a lighthouse casting its beam across a black sea, shone on the forest and lit the white stones Hansel had dropped. They shone out like gems, guiding the children to the very front door of their cottage. Knock, knock. The look on their father's face when he opened the door was like Christmas morning. The look on their stepmother's face was Halloween. Nice one. Here are the kids. Intelligent children. When the children were safely tucked up in bed, they could hear the bark and snarl of her as she nagged her husband. You fool! Trust you to let them find their way home. You'd better make a better job of it tomorrow, or we'll both starve. Just kick her out, so you don't need to starve. Gretel clutched her brother's hand in terror, but he soothed her, sobbing. Instead of eating the crust of bread given him as supper, Hansel pushed it deep into his pocket. Next day, as the woodcutter led them down miles of tangling pathways in the very middle of the woods, Hansel picked from the crust crumb after crumb of bread, dropping a trail of breadcrumbs, marking the way they had come. In the heart of the forest, their father kissed them and dried his eyes. Wait here for me, I shall come back for you at home time. God forgive me if I don't. They could hear his axe blows touch, crack, echoing further and further off. Then silence fell, and Gretel began to cry. Hansel was not worried. He even whistled as he waited. He knew their father would not come back for them, sadly. But he also knew that the white breadcrumbs would shine out in the white moonlight and show them the way home to their front door. The light faded. The woodcutter did not come. The moon rose, and all the little birds of the forest went home to their nests, with white bread in their beaks for their hungry chicks. When Hansel and Gretel began to look for the path home, every moonlit that looked the same. There was no way to tell them apart. The birds had eaten every crumb. Hansel and Gretel searched and ran and called, but they were alone in the heart of the great forest. Lost, hopeless, lost. Huddling together for warmth, the children slept, and the birds, realizing what they had done, dropped a blanket of leaves over the sleeping pair, a quilt of green and yellow. Next day, the children began walking aimlessly through the forest, and of course, searching for berries to eat. They were fearfully hungry, so both thought they were dreaming when, in a sunlight clearing, they saw a funny little cottage. Its walls were made of gingerbread, its roof of marzipan, its shutters were wafers, its doors chocolate, each chimney a twist of barley sugar. Hansel and Gretel rushed up. I would rush as well to one house like this. Hansel and Gretel rushed up a path cobbled with sugared almond and raced around the delightful house. Yeah, not going. Sniffing and stroking the walls, trampling flower beds of Parma. Violets without even realizing. Hansel broke a piece of the roof and crammed it into his mouth. Oh ho! Rat in the even, huh? Of course, that's a witch. Nibble my house, would you? Well, you'll be sorry. Out of the house scuttled a bent, gnarled old woman, her face as scrambled as a ball of paper. I imagine one face like this. But peering short-sightedly at the visitors, she showed her yellow teeth in a twisted smile. Children, is it? Mm. Well, how nice. Help yourself, little ones. Do. There's better inside. Won't you come in and then? A lovely, yummy house for hungry children. Hope you can see the drawing. In went Hansel and Gretel. We are very sorry, we were just so hungry, and all those delicious. Not another word, said the old lady, sitting them down at the table. Here's caramel for you, boy, and lemon drops for you, my dear. And she brought so many plates of sweets to the table that the children groaned with pleasure. It was a strange kitchen with a big stove and stable. The rest of the room were but for a large cage in one dark corner, and a large locked chest in another. Now who's good at housework? Asked the old lady as they sat loosening their belts. At once Gretel jumped up. I am. Shall I wash up, Grandma? She asked. You will, suddenly with a cackle that shattered the water jug. The old woman knocked over Hansel's chair, spilling him onto the floor. With a twig broom, she pushed him into the cage and clutched shut the door before throwing the broom at Gretel's head. Wicked witch. And when you done the dishes, you can sweep the floor and make me my bed, scrub the step and feed the chickens. From today onwards, you're my slave. Ha 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 ha. Great. House breakers, roof nibblers, you're the lucky one, girl. Your brother won't live as long. Hansel rattled the bars of the iron cage. Why? Let me out. What are you going to do to me? The old witch hobbled over to him and peered through the bars. Her lips drooped. Well, I eat you, of course, boy. Boys more delicious than girls. As soon as you're fat enough, don't eat. then. Naturally, thanks to the famine, Hansel and Gretel were about as thin as two children could be. But the old witch, who liked only meat and plenty of meat on the bones, had a remedy for that. Every day she served Hansel a delectable meal of sweet things, fattening him up for the day. She would roast him and eat him with a sprig of parsley in his hair. Being short-sighted, she bumped about the house, breaking off pieces of candy and fumbling them onto a plate, which she tipped through the bars of the cage, showering Hansel with sugar. Then, poor Hansel. You can see the drawing. Yeah. Put out your finger, boy, she would yelp, and squeezing his finger fiercely between her toothless gums, she would spit with disgust and say, too thin, not ready yet. Oh my goodness. Oddly enough, Hansel's finger grew no fatter. Shall I tell you why? It was Gretel's idea. Whenever the witch says, put out your finger, she whispered to him one night, hold out this stick instead. A good idea. And and she gave him a thin twig from the needling beside the stove. So no matter how much the witch fed Hansel, the finger she mumbled each day between her toothless gums grew no fatter than a twig. And away she would go, saying, too thin, will this boy never be fat enough to eat? Inside his cage, plump round Hansel sat and watched his sister work her fingers to the bone doing the witch's housework, while he ate and slept and thought of the day when the trick with the twig stopped working. Enough, screeched the witch one morning. I've waited long enough. I haven't eaten roast boy now for years, and I have a mind to eat some today. Gretel, light the stove. Now the stove was huge, a cast iron coal of a cooker with a great deep in the back, which had to be lit by hand. The witch gave Gretel a lighted spell and told her, crawl inside and light the stove, girl, and be quick about it. I don't know how, said Gretel. Just crawl inside and light the candling, you stupid child, said the witch. I don't understand, Mom, said Gretel. Why not? It's as easy as spitting, read the old witch. I'm very stupid, said Gretel. Stepmothers always said so. Must I do everything myself? Exclaimed the witch in exasperation, and snatched the spell from Gretel. stretching her scrawny neck and poking her goat-like head in at the door of the oven, she reached forward and lit the candling with a single blow of her broom. Gretel whacked the witch black behind with all her might, toppling her into the oven and slamming shut the cast iron door. The fire in the oven blazed and roared. The witch burned with a purple flame. The gingerbread ceiling softened and sagged in the head, and both chimney pots fell to the ground outside. Meanwhile, Gretel fetched the keys from under the witch's mattress and freed Hansel. He could barely squeeze through the cage door. He was so fat. Inside the locked chest they found a fortune in pearls and jet and gold, none of it made of sugar. Lovely. So with one sack full of gingerbread and one of treasure, the two children set off back through the forest. They had no idea which way to go, but came soon to the wide river where swans as large as Venetian gondolas cruised up and down, up and down. "Will you carry us over?" called Gretel, and one swan drew close to the bank, allowing there they are enjoying themselves, escaping. Lovely. Lovely. Allowing the children to nestle down between its folded wings. Down the river, riding the current, went the great white swan, until at last Hansel recognized the countryside around him. "I know where we are. We could be home in an hour." The swan set them ashore, and Hansel and Gretel walked the rest of the way to their own front door, dragging their heavy sacks. But there was something strange about the ramshackle old cottage, something different. It was silent. No shrill carping or complaining disturbed the birds from the roof ridge. No noise of nagging unsettled the butterflies from the flowers. Their stepmother was nowhere around. When their father opened the door, he hugged his lost children so close they could not speak. "I thought you were dead. I thought I'd killed you. I haven't had a minute's peace inside. I gave in to the cruel, wicked woman." "Well, man, he came to his senses. That's good. I should never have listened to her. Can you ever forgive me? She's gone now. Dead and gone, and good riddance, I say. Come inside, come inside. I'll find you something to eat. Something, somehow." These good children, they can forgive his father quickly. But there was no need for the woodcutter to sacrifice his last bite of bread, for Hansel and Gretel had brought a sack full of gingerbread to eat and go to buy meat and bread and more. And with the death of the witch deep in the forest, the famine left that part of the world, spread its wings, and flew away like a great black crow, leaving the fields full of grain once more and the cows as brown as gingerbread. I like gingerbread cows. And almost as fat as Hansel. That's it, my dears. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye.